I think the difference with us is that we're very bespoke in our solutions. It's a boutique style approach. In other words, we have law firms and some of them even practice within the same, vertical, and yet we still treat them completely different. And because operationally companies are different. And I think this is one of the problems of AI integration. This reminds me so much of the 1980s and 90s when the computers first came onto the scene. You couldn't just take a computer, throw it in a room, turn it on and go, well, we're integrated. Well, it doesn't work that way. You had to find a way to manually get the data in, and then when you were done, all these systems were still manual, so you had to get a way to get it out manually. This is why we have those godforsaken things called printers. Thank God they're going away. But Office Space, the printer scene, every IT person saw that movie was like crying during that scene of tears of joy. But and I've totally aged myself because half your listenership is like, what? Office Space? What? Printer? What is that? It's like Google it if you don't know what that is.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Mr. Art Powell from Trinsic Technologies. And today we'll be diving into his story a little bit, what it is his company does, and then, as always, some engaging insights into the technology industry. So make sure to stick around for this one. But without further ado, Art, thanks for hopping on. Glad to have you, man.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think it's if we can kick things off, if you could kindly just give us a bit around your background, please. That would be great. And just a quick introduction.
I'm old, so I remember when computers were actually first coming onto the scene, and I owned an insurance company, and my wife said she made one of the worst mistakes she made in her life. She bought me a computer. It was like 486, I believe, at that time. I took to it like a fish to water, and I was neglecting my insurance clients who were calling my wife saying, "What's going on? We can't get a hold of Art. Where's Art at?" Art had his head buried in that device. And so then my wife said she made the second worst mistake she made in her life. And she said, you need to choose between computers and you need to choose between or your insurance company. So I sold the insurance company and started a computer business, was doing hardware, and then did that for a while. Then Compaq and Dell went into their first price war. I realized hardware was a commodity already, that it was going to be a race to the bottom. So my wife at that point was like, I want another child and do not want to pay cash for this one. So you're going to go back to work for a corporation, which I hated, but I did it. I went back to work as an IBM contractor. And then I was in, various roles. They figured out that I was technical, but I could actually hold a conversation with people. And so, they immediately put you in management, whether you're ready for that or not at that point. And then I eventually was director of IT for several companies. And then I started Trinsic in 2003 or 4, and then we incorporated in 2005. I took over, asked my wife, like, is this the last, I wanted to do one more, and she informed me this would be the last one. So I better make it. Yeah. The last, after the insurance company and the PC company, she's like, this is it. Like you're not doing anything else after this. So I took it to heart, and we've been in business 20 years. I took over the CEO role reluctantly in 2016, but we have grown, minus the last year that was not a recession, that was a recession. We grew from 2016 to 2022, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100, it was a little more than that, about 200% revenue growth.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. We were small then, but it was still a lot. And so the last year we grew was in 23, 22, we grew, we still grew. That was our peak year. We grew about 31, 32%. And we weren't small then, so that was a lot. So we kind of scaled back a little bit in 23. We had to get some ducks in a row, get the right customer base. There were some old customers that were just not a good fit anymore. And then 24 was a little more difficult. We were bringing in a lot of new business, but we had, there was definitely a hit on the economy in 24. Things are definitely slowing down. But we know how to survive. We survived through 2008. We're in a very good position to take advantage of the new recessions. We typically do very well at that point. So when it's an officially a recession. So, but that's I've never, if I woke up when I was 21, if I'd gotten out of bed and you would have said, I was, or 20 when I was an agnostic atheist and said, "Hey, Art, you're going to teach theology at a 4,000K church on a volunteer basis, and you're going to be CEO of a company." I probably would have punched you in the face. Like that was like those were the two things Oh, and I was never going to be married, right? Now I'm on
Right.
33 years of marriage. I was never going to have children. I have two adult children. I was never going to own a minivan or a station wagon. I owned a minivan, which were so the 90s and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, so all the things I swore I'd never do, I have ended up pretty much doing them. So there's a lesson in there somewhere, I think.
What a very interesting background. Well, thank goodness for your wife telling you, oh,
Yeah.
this is the last one. Make this kite fly. So
Yep.
kudos, shout out to your wife. That's awesome, man. Tell me, obviously, like you said, you've got the business already. You've run now for 20 years.
Yep.
What from a market perspective, tell me in your, specifically in the industry, what are like
Mhm.
the latest trends that you're picking up? What ways are the winds blowing these days?
Yeah, that's a great question. I saw that question and I was like, man, what a great question because I do think things have changed. I mean, and I think we
Mm,
we have it's not a full realization of how much they've changed. And then on top of that, AI is about to come in and change it up all over again.
yep.
And we can talk more about AI because we're actually coming out with our first AI product in probably March, April of this year.
Oh wow.
The problem is that obviously the traditional phone dialing is going away. Email is getting harder to reach people by email. We went out to the SB, the Small Business Expo conference down in Houston and Dallas, and we were Houston. It was overwhelming.
Right.
They were expecting about 8,000. These are it's all small business owners that are being invited. They were expecting somewhere around, I think they were expecting somewhere around 8,000 people, and I think somewhere around 12. They said 12,000 showed up, and I believe it. It was so many people we couldn't,
Goodness.
like we couldn't even. I didn't bring enough people, like we couldn't even
Yeah.
talk. So when we went up to the Dallas one, I brought a total of three people and myself just to talk to people, and that was a little better. Like we were able to stay up. But I do think that marketing is going to go back a little bit more to the relationship. Sales have always been about relationships. I always tell people sales isn't about what you know, it's who you know. But I
Right.
think when it comes to marketing, and there's always been a lot of an arguments about what's the effectiveness of marketing if you're not Geico and you can't put out a commercial every 5 minutes and keep your name brand out there or Progressive, right?
Right.
So there's always been that argument about branding and how effective is it. The problem now is there's so many channels, right? There's so many places you can market, and some of them are drying up, like traditional television. Then
Mm.
some of them are reopening. Thanks Amazon Prime Video. I pay all that monthly fee so I can now see commercials. But anyway,
Good
it's
point.
like that did not last long into it. So they're starting to open up with commercials now, and then it's just so like, and then you have companies like Bucky's who grew exponentially without pretty much any marketing, and so although their stores themselves are marketing, so, and I think, that's a great question. I think the marketing has changed with the internet quite a bit, particularly in the last 15, 20 years. I think there you have to find what you do and is it going to be effective? Ours is a very long enterprise B2B sales cycle. And so regardless of what we're selling, whether we're selling our AI integration or any of our buckets that we live in, it's a long sales cycle. And so it's very
Mm.
relationship. Even the sale itself is very relationship. We still get a ton of leads off of vendors and partners that partner with us that refer us to their customers that have relationships with. I think that is still very effective, and I think it's going to become even more, because it's just there are just so many channels out there, so they're impossible to lock it into one channel and then and mine that channel. So I don't have a great answer on that. I know it's changed to what extent and how, and I don't know if anybody has a really great answer to that question.
Good. The I think this is actually a good time. if you don't mind, just to explain a bit, what is it
Yeah.
specifically what your company does?
Yeah, we've lived in four buckets. So our first one is consulting. So when it is our sales tool, we have when someone comes to us and says we're interested in your services, whatever that service is, we do a consultation right out of the start. Because if I'm an architect and you show up and say I want you to build me a house, and I say great, I can design it for you, and then they're like, how much is it going to cost? You're going to be like, well, wait a second, I have to know how many rooms you're going to have and what kind of material you want to use. I can't just throw a number out there. Well, we work on the same principle. We do from the consultation, we do everything. We look at everything from a strategic and tactical standpoint. So we're interviewing the executive of this company. What is the strategy? Where are you headed? All the way down to key employees who have to use the technology on a day-to-day basis. Is it effective? What's working? What's not working? And then we look at the technology stack itself, and they get a fully fledged report. And this is so even if they don't go with us, we've done 80% of the work for them. The second
Right.
bucket we live in is the traditional MSP. We consider, we don't like the word MSP. We say technology services because unfortunately MSP is like the word evangelical. It's got some
Yeah.
negative connotation to it. Some of it deserved. And I say that as a non-denominational, not really.
Yeah. Tongue in
But I
cheek.
teach, yeah, I teach theology, so some of it I can throw shade at my own house there a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's technology services, everything from hosting, desktops to full 24/7 desktop support to network monitoring, whatever is needed at that point. The third bucket that we live in is cloud. And when I say cloud, I don't mean like we push these people to Amazon or to Azure or to, Google Cloud. We built our own cloud. Like we literally built our own. I know because I would be driving a much nicer car if we had not spent all that money on the hardware. But
Yeah.
that has
Yeah.
paid off. We built it in 2015, so we're not Johnny come latelys at this at all. We've got some big companies. We're very proud of that. We had one in particular, Jama Software, JAMA. They have all their QA and dev servers with us. They're hopefully soon they're working on allowing us to be able to host their clients, some of the clients' applications that don't want to be on the big three. So that side of the fence is growing for us, and so we're very proud of that. It's not a Lego cloud. I mean, it is a serious cloud. We have extremely high uptimes on it,
Yeah.
better than the big three. And with us, you get actually service. So we're very proud of that product, and it's going very well. Then the last bucket we live in is AI. And so artificial intelligence, we've been playing with it now for about 2 years. We've coming out with our first product that we've been working on for almost 18 months.
Mm.
And we are working on some other AI integrations with companies. Our AI, and we don't have to talk about this now, but our AI philosophy is quite a bit different than others. We're not just pushing them off to, Chat GTP or things like that. We have a lot of companies that are in HIPAA and FINRA, and so they can't do that until we have alternate solutions for AI to work on the back end, self-hosted AIs that are dedicated to work specifically for them. And so
Yeah.
we're real excited about that. Also, we're getting traction on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Talking about AI, it's the buzzword, right?
Yep.
The especially what you mentioned now, just high level touching on what you guys are planning to launch for the
Hmm.
AI. You know, I do have a lot of business owners that's or rather CTOs actually that they're in a position now where the board of their companies are saying, hey, we need to get, hop on this wagon of AI. We need to get going. But, three-quarters of the board don't know what AI really is, or, they just know they need to
Yeah.
do it. And then, unfortunately, there's the CTOs or the IT directors, they're in a position where they've only got that amount of budget, and this department wants that done on front end, and this one wants to take that data, and at the back end, your operations want that done.
Yep.
So it's quite interesting how this whole thing is currently unfolding, and like every month there's like these technologies, like you mentioned. Now you guys got some it sounds like some interesting
Yeah.
things coming up, right? So but something I would like to know, the you've mentioned a lot of value already, of like you mentioned those pillars of your business, and you guys are actually
Hmm.
very much diverse. If you like had to, or had to like summarize from differentiated point of view, from a
Yep.
value standpoint, right? What would you say would stick out, about your company versus the market?
Yeah, I think that the difference with us is that we're very bespoke in our solutions.
Mm.
It's a boutique style approach. In other words, we have law firms and some of them even practice within the same, vertical, and yet we still treat them completely different. And
Right.
because operationally companies are different, and I think this is one of the problems of AI integration. This reminds me so much of the 1980s and 90s when the
Yeah.
computers first came onto the scene. You couldn't just take a computer, throw it in a room, turn it on, and go, "Well, we're integrated." Well, it doesn't work that way. You had to
Yeah.
find a way to manually get the data in, and then when you were done, all these systems were still manual, so you had to get a way to get it out manually. This is why we have those godforsaken things called printers. Thank God they're going away. But but Office Space, the printer scene, yeah, every IT person saw that movie was like crying during that scene of tears of joy. But and I've totally aged myself because half your listenership is like, what? Office Space? What? Printer? What is that? It's like Google it if you don't know what that is. But the whole thing is that the this is very much like where we were at with the internet. This is a disruptive technology, but the problem is you can't just take it and slap it into a system and you're integrated. You have to find a way to get the data in. You have to find a way to get the data back
Mm.
out into your systems. And so this is forcing a lot of companies. We're already seeing this from clients to say, my number one problem before I can even begin to do that is to have all this data in these disparate systems. How do I get them together? Right. And so we call it the data cube. It's like we take all these data, put it together, then the AI can do things with it. So AI, the befuddlement of what to do with AI is a legitimate befuddlement. And it kind of blows my mind that companies aren't trying to address this. And so with our bespoke and solution and the solutioning and the fact that we actually work with a client at the operational level, we're not transactional. Like we're gonna get to know your business, how you work, how you do things, then that is where you can get AI integrated. And I think that's our value proposition is that we work at that level. We don't work at the transactional level. The second thing is whether it be AI or the data cube or whatever technology you're implementing, what people aren't talking about is like, what's my ROI on this? If I spend $50,000 a month to solve a $25,000 a month problem, that's not a win.
That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And so there's going to be areas where AI is not going to make sense over human beings. And this is what people need to understand. It's still relatively expensive in certain things you do with the AI. There's certain areas where it makes a lot of sense. And our AI
Yeah.
product, like the AI product we're doing is for telephone answering services and call centers.
Mm.
It was born out of that. It was born out of a need. They're most of those call centers and telephone answering services are required to inspect by contract somewhere from 1 to 5% of the calls coming in. And most of these people are doing like 3,500 to 10,000 calls a day. Well, like yeah,
Yeah.
people will be jumping off bridges, killing themselves if you made them listen to that many calls, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you're only getting a sampling, and so we're using AI to help them like find the bad calls so they can do what they're supposed to be doing,
Right.
which is basically like training and
Selling.
actually doing QA. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but we're only using this product as an example to say, look, this is what we're talking about. Like this solves a serious problem and the ROI on it is good. Like you would spend $50,000 a month in labor to review all those calls, when you can do it for $6,000-7,000 a month. Why wouldn't you do that? Right.
Yeah.
And so these are the type of things we need to do. And I think that's the value of Trinsic is we come in and treat each company operationally as an entity of itself and to make sure the technology is integrated within their operations so they can get the highest value.
Wow, that's profound. And a lot of what you said, it makes such a lot of sense. Like I mentioned earlier, I just know that a lot of management of companies just don't fully understand what you just explained.
Yeah.
And because, like I said, because there's such a big hype, about it. Art,
Oh, AI went past the hype stage. Like it went into the bubble stage. It just blew right past the hype and went in the bubble
just
stage.
wait.
And the problem with that is I tell people you that doesn't mean you don't need to be using it. Like you need to find where you can integrate it because it may have gone into the hype and then right into the bubble phase, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not going to have an impact. It's not going to
Yeah.
solve the world's problems. It's not going to replace employees. It's not going to replace coders. Like, we're far from that. But that doesn't mean that if your competitor uses it in a strategic way that they won't have a strategic advantage over you. They will. And so it
Yeah.
is important that you can find where you can integrate it and you can use it.
You know, the you mentioned law firms earlier. We have a client in Phoenix where they, law firms are like part of their target market as well. And it was so interesting. I was actually, at a certain stage involved with, discovery process and things like that. And it was so interesting having a conversation with these IT departments at law firms where, they, with Chat GPT and all running around, the guys, I mean, there's a lot of red tape when it comes to a law industry and you're using Chat GPT, right? And the stories that I've heard of how people do these summaries of cases, right? And there was that big law case actually about it a couple of years ago as
Yeah,
well.
California, where that guy
Yeah.
used ChatGPT and it made up predicents,
And
just made them up out of the air. And he got in trouble, and rightfully so. I don't
you
think they
know,
disbarred him, but he got in trouble.
you got in trouble, man. And especially with but there's good value in as well from an AI standpoint where
Sure.
when it comes to, because I mean they've got documents and documents and documents, obviously of information. So there's definitely a place for it, and just to save on time and up the productivity, and I fully
Yep.
agree with you. I think AI is here to not replace the human, but to enhance and to be more productive and so on, right? But what I wanted to
Hmm.
get your opinion on, I mean, you've been owner of a business, like we said, for quite some time.
Hmm.
you know there's a lot of let's call it IT managers that's thinking to themselves, hey man, time for me to jump ship. I've been working for this company for so many years. I want to make this leap. I mean, you were in it, you went out of it, you went back in it, and you started your company,
Yeah.
right? Whereas, is there some advice that you would give, what it takes to be like a successful founder of a company?
Yeah, a lot of hard work. I wish there were shortcuts, but I worked 8 hours a week. Now I bootstrapped it financially, so we don't have any unsecured debt, and we're just about profitable every year. Couple of years we've been ramen noodle profitable. I got bought you a box of ramen noodles with the profit, but we still, 2009. I remember that vividly, but it's just hard work. You have to be willing to go all in. I mean, I see so many people, even in my church, who tell me, well, I've got this side business. I would love to make it happen. I'm like, you got to make it happen. You got to just go
Yeah.
jump in there and make it happen. You can't,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't. There's no halfway to doing this. If you're going to make it happen, you got to make it happen. And I worked 80 hours a week for the first 3.5 years. I'll never do that again. And but people, I won't say never, but I would like to not do that again. But I have people who go to my church and there's like, I'm working 80 hours a week, and I'm looking at them going, no, you're not tired enough. I've actually done 80-hour weeks, and but the whole thing is you have to really believe what you're selling. You have to work very, very hard, and then you have to exist. And I think so many times people get frustrated because they're not a home run hit right out of the gate.
Mm.
And I'm like, you gotta just survive. A lot of times, if you hang around, doors will open and opportunities will open up. And so that's why it's so important to get to the point where you can pay yourself a living, where you can pay other employees a living in the
Mm.
company, and get to that point, because then doors start opening up for you. And
Right, right.
we have this dream, this false dream and narrative in the United States about entrepreneurs that, like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, like they built these things by themselves, and they didn't. Jeff Bezos didn't even come up with the Prime membership. That was another executive who thought that up. And the difference between is those guys, Jeff Bezos worked, they
Bezos.
almost went out of business with
Yeah.
selling books, right? And Bill Gates made like 50,000 a year for like 10 years while he's trying to get Microsoft off the ground. I mean, I love, if you've never watched it, I highly recommend the Toy Story documentary about Pixar Studios.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Toy Story took them 11 years to make, if I remember correctly. And when it came out, everybody was like, "Oh," because they were literally writing the software and waiting for CPUs to get more powerful so they could do what they
Wow.
wanted to do. And
I
when it
need to. I need
yeah,
to
yeah,
look into that. That's awesome.
and when it came out, they were like, "Oh, you're an overnight success," and the guy was like, "Yeah, like a 10-year overnight success, right?" So
Yeah.
we have this narrative about successful companies that doesn't always line up with the reality of how they got to where they're at. And the other narrative I really don't like is the entrepreneur who is like the face of the company, who he's the one who built the company. And yeah, he may have the vision and he may have
Right.
the drive and the passion, but none of them made it without having successful people. And I would
Yeah.
not been around for 20 years. Trinsic would not have been around if it hadn't been for the key partners and people, Phil Battlestein, Brad Trim, who was my CTO, was my first employee. Like they have stuck it out thick and thin to get this company where it is. And
Yeah.
that's the only way, so it takes hard work and then you got to find good people who are going to buy into the dream, and give up on this idea that you're going to do it because that's not how it works.
It's not how it works. Yeah, it's good to have that engine. The what I wanted to ask you to tell the audience is how can they get hold of you guys? But it's kind of on that background, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's on the background.
so,
But they can
so
also, they can also get a hold of, if they've got questions, they can just go to
mm,
www.trinsictech.com/contact. And there's a contact form on there. They can fill it out and we'll get back to them. They can email me, obviously. I have an executive assistant too. So if I don't see it right away, she'll jump on it. And we'd be glad to talk to them about any of the four buckets. Or, I love entrepreneurs, man. I mentor entrepreneurs in Austin.
awesome.
I think entrepreneurship is what makes the United States the greatest country in the world. I'm a
I
high
agree.
school graduate who built a multi-million-dollar corporation from scratch with no investment. How many other companies, how many other countries in the world can you do that, right? It's
Yeah,
very limited. And
I
so
agree.
I think entrepreneurship. So I do everything. I encourage entrepreneurs because I think it's very important in our culture and it's what's made us very successful.
Excellent. Well, Art, thank you so much for hopping on today. You provided, such good insight. I think there's a lot of people that can take a lot from what topics you covered today. And then I wish you all the best to you, your business, and thanks for hopping on. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.